What's up, Fantasy Champions? Spotlight Sports Network is excited to tell you about an amazing deal from Thrive Fantasy, your place for daily fantasy sports and esports. Right now with promo code SS Network, Thrive Fantasy will match up to $50 of your first deposit. So go to thrivefantasy.com and sign up now with promo code SS Network. That's thrivefantasy.com, promo code SS Network. Do you like the Oakland A's? Are you a fan of the Golden Knights? Do you love the Los Angeles Chargers? Well then, my friend, you're in the right place. This is the Snake Sports Talk Show with your host, Jake the Snake SIlva, brought to you by the Spotlight Sports Network.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, well, we are back yet again with another special night here on a Tuesday night, live from Las Vegas. This is the Snake Sports Talk Show, wherever and however you may be watching. We're live on the Spotlight Sports Network, where you can find us all over the place. Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. And I'm so busy here tonight. I've got a lot to explain, and man, it's going to be a lot of fun. I can't wait to get started with this sooner, but we've had a lot of stuff going on. I hope all you guys enjoyed the divisional matchup this past weekend. I honestly thought these were really good games. And by the way, hockey is officially back. I've been excited about that. And again, we're just getting loads and loads of news talks every day, coaching carousel. So this Tuesday night is going to be a lot of fun. So, all right. All right, so I'm going to start with this first and foremost. So the coaching carousel has officially started. And there was a lot to really kind of break down. But there were a bunch of teams that needed coaches, and the ones that I thought were very interesting to me. So let's start off first off with the New York Jets. First off, the Jets, for one, they needed they definitely needed a head coach
that was going to be very stable, and I loved who they got in Robert Saleh. Robert Saleh is now coming in out of a San Francisco organization that I think is very impressive. The defense has been strengthened, not to mention, I mean, he's a type of alpha male type coach. He's a guy that is willing to fix issues. So the Jets right now are kind of in the best seat, knowing that they got a defensive coordinating coach in Robert Saleh and what he's been able to do to San Francisco's defense. I think this is special. And I think this is really good. This is the juice that the Jets need and what the city of New York needs. Listen, I don't know what I'm going to get with Joe Judge. At first, I thought the Giants were going to be a big-time specialty team. But the Jets now have elevated. And they've elevated in a positive way. And I think Joe Douglas is really going to love this move. And let's not forget either, you have the Sam Darnold situation. Now, there is a lot of news that's kind of buzzing around. What the Jets can do, and this is what's their best situation. I've been saying about this. They'll either keep Sam Darnold, they could either draft a quarterback in number 2, or what's now been a big buzz is now Deshaun Watson no longer happy in Houston. And he wants out. He hasn't made that public yet that he wants a trade. But I think all of us, including myself, are basically saying he's ready to be out. Houston is imploding. I think it's obvious. And the Jets could very much end up picking up Deshaun Watson. Think about it this way. If they traded quarterbacks where they'll get Darnold in Houston, bring Deshaun Watson in, give away that number 2 draft pick as well, and then not to mention get at least a few compensated picks, I think the Jets could really work themselves, because now having Saleh there as their head coach, that means there is a lot of adjustment to their defense. I really did like Marcus May. I thought he was a very, very impressive secondary. The front line is really starting to impact, and I think it's been very, very good. And it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting, but this is the juice New York needs. And I mean, I looked at New York left and right. It's you got all the same people walking down the same avenues and the same streetways, and they all are kind of feeling the same way, pissed off, tired, and it says, I want change. Well, we all do want that. We all do want that. And I think the Jets very much have got themselves in the driver's seat. And also another coaching hire that I really do enjoy is Brandon Staley to the Chargers. 10 coaches in the Chargers organization, only 9 of them were offensive. Now, a lot of people can say, well, whatever happened with the favorite to Brian Dable? He was going to end up being the next head coach. Well, maybe the Chargers had something else in mind, because the last time they had a defensive coach was Marty Schottenheimer. And in 2006, Schottenheimer got the Chargers to 14-2 before he was relieved of his duty and they moved off, which is basically a conversation nobody will have the answer for, not even for myself. But I do believe Brandon Staley brings a huge amount of energy. Los Angeles now is a big time market where the Chargers and the Rams, they're going to be making some big time moves. Now, the Rams are going to be very interesting to watch, and I'll get into that a little later. But Staley, in his first year as a defensive coordinator for the Rams, they were number 1 in defense. They are also the number 1 best passing defense as far as on the deep ball throw. They shut it down. They had 5 interceptions, a couple of them from Darius Williams. Jalen Ramsey was impactful. Troy Hill. A lot of these big-time secondaries was great. And that was what was the difference maker for the Rams. Not to mention Michael Brockers and Aaron Donald and the front line. They are big, impactful players. So the Chargers right now are in a positive direction, and they are moving where they're getting younger, they are getting stronger, they're getting innovative, and I think they're getting better. Here's the thing. Offense was not the issue for the Chargers. Justin Herbert came in like lightning in a bottle. Unbelievable. And he broke a lot of rookie records. And they were 8th in the league in offense. Pep Hamilton and Shane Steichen definitely shaped up this offense. They were efficient in the pass game. They were efficient in the run game. And the wide receivers managed to stay healthy. And a lot of them, by the way, like 2 wide receivers, Tyron Johnson and Jalen Guyton, they all together had at least over 1,000 receiving yards. So offense was not the problem. Defense was completely mediocre. Now, let's not forget they suffered injuries. And they suffered a bunch of, losses on the defense. And I think they're still going to make some more moves and some more changes. But this is exciting moves in this coaching carousel. And I can't wait to see what they're going to do, what their next move is on their plans. But the Chargers have been getting busy with it. And as far as for the Jets, Robert Saleh's got some interesting connections. And I think the future is very much bright for the Jets. Now, I truly think that if you really want to make this work and make the team competitive, because of course they could do whatever they want to with that number 2 pick and however they're going to end up going about themselves. But I truly think you put Deshaun Watson on the Jets, that organization and that franchise is really going to rise above the rest. All right, let's talk a little bit about NBA, shall we? Because the NBA, and I've been waiting to talk about this, but there was a lot of changes and a lot of shifts. And in my opinion, one of them that I'm definitely going to end up talking about, this is about the Kyrie Irving situation and the The Nets get James Harden on a 3-team trade, and they gave away a lot of big-time bench role players, including Karis LeVert. Now, it's unfortunate because Karis LeVert is out for the season. But James Harden wanted a new picture. He wanted a fresh new start, and he goes to Brooklyn where he's reunited with his old teammate, Kevin Durant. And it's interesting to see how James Harden's really going to work with Brooklyn. But one person in particular that I've been saying for years, but people don't seem to catch it very easily. Kyrie Irving, I'm not saying is not a really good player. I truly think, and even if he does have personal issues in his mind, but this is how I ended up thinking about this. Basketball, amongst football, the NFL, this is a team where you are tested of how much thick skin you really got because you're hit every single day. You're training in the gym 24/7, and you're trying to better yourself and boost the organization. The NBA, what is so different from amongst all these other major sports, you got all these young kids signing shoe deals at 18, 19 years old. They haven't even spent more years in college. And quite frankly, some of these antics from left to right, there are some that listen, I love watching LeBron James. I love watching Kevin Durant. I love watching Luka Doncic. But there are a couple of players in this league that some just don't have the leadership qualities. Some of them that I just think pose some sort of concerns when it comes to leadership and when it comes to their antics on and off the court. So that's kind of the thing I look at with Kyrie Irving. Listen, 2020 was already hard enough for a lot of people, myself included. Okay, there was a lot of things I processed that I'm telling you right now, in the new year of 2021, I hope I don't go through that again. And I think a lot of us are thinking the same thing. But when Kyrie Irving leaves for his personal reasons, the worst thing that happened, you don't notify the coach. You don't notify the organization. And the word gets out. So it leaves KD behind, leaves James Harden behind. And of course, questions are going to spur. But it doesn't mean you have to explain to media your personal life. What it means is give them an indication that, listen, I need to take a break. My mind is not set. I need to get some personal work. There have been a ton of players that I have seen in this league. CC Sabathia, he had to leave because he was having a serious drinking problem. But then eventually came back to the Yankees, and man, he was one of the greatest stories before he retired. CC Sabathia had a serious problem. Bobby Ryan in Ottawa had an alcohol issue. Went to AA meetings, got help, and then when he came back out on the ice, it was one of the most incredible stories. And that was, again, these guys were going through personal issues. And by the way, Robin Leonard was going through serious issues. And by the way, he'll never explain why the panda sticker or the logo is always there. It's personal, but it's what saved his life. So when I look at Kyrie Irving, and by the way, he had his press conference when he returned to the Nets. And here's the thing. This is where I'm going to point out, folks. If you actually looked at the press conference, notice his body language, notice how he looks on camera, and what is coming out of his mouth, for one. But here was Kyrie Irving on the return.
It's, pretty interesting in watching when you take a break from everything. There's just so many assumptions about what's going on. And so many people feel like they know me best. And they have no idea who I am, or what I'm about, or what I stand for, or even attempt to take the time, or even for me to invite them to take the time. So it's a two-way street. And when things become overwhelming in life, you just got to take a step back and realize what's important. And I love to play. It's never been questioned. I've committed myself, when this wasn't even a thing for me. I didn't really care about media, didn't really care about the fandom. All I cared about was just the ethics of the game and being taught the fundamentals. And now that it's become bigger and there's more of a responsibility that I have in this position I'm in, I'm grateful because I'm able to stand on this platform with others alongside of me that have sacrificed and are going through similar things. So I'm not alone in this.
Are you truly grateful? Are you truly grateful to be in the league? Are you truly grateful in the position you are? Are you truly grateful in your love life? Listen, all of us has gone through hard times, and I get that. But here's the thing. Like you mentioned, it's like business. It's like relationships. It's like friendships. It's like a lot of things in life. It's always a two-way street. Never, ever is it a highway and a bike path. But when you don't communicate with your significant other and you don't communicate with your boss, you don't communicate with your coach, people are going to question and people are going to assume you don't care. Your significant other is already going to end up having the indication you just don't care about the relationship. Your boss is basically going to get the indication you just don't care about the job. And your coach really just doesn't care. Like he's going to get the assumption you don't care about the team. So Kyrie, what I've always noticed about it, he's never a number one for me. Never has been, never will be. I don't even think he's a capable number two since James Harden arrived. And listen, James Harden, his story, he wanted to get the hell out of Houston because it's just not working. He doesn't want to be a leader. He wants to win a championship. But the other problem of it is he just doesn't want to end up putting the work in to be to be at least a finals champion. He doesn't want to end up putting in the work. But that is where Steve Nash in his first year as a head coach, he's got a lot he has to deal with. And he has to now shape James Harden to where he comes in, to Brooklyn. You got Kevin Durant, and Kevin Durant knows a lot about James Harden, knows his work ethic, knows exactly his strengths and his struggles. And that's where he's going to voice that out to him. Kevin Durant, to me, is a leader. Now, a lot of people can say what they want to about Kevin Durant's move. But antics like this is one that I just believe, did KD really make the right move to go to Brooklyn, to team up with Kyrie, to deal with James Harden? Kyrie Irving, since leaving LeBron, I mean, you could look at it any way that you want, but he's not a leader. He's not one that you can trust that is going to show up, put in the work, and not to mention, I mean, it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. Listen, I think he's a talented ball player. But what I just saw from the interview looks like a complete mockery of those who are dealing with serious mental issues and serious personal issues. That's the part that I can't stand. And that's the part that I've been talking about with Kyrie for a long time, that he puts himself over the team. That's not how you do it in basketball. That's not how Golden State won championships with Steph and Clay. That's not how LeBron ended up doing it with whoever he was with. Miami, Cleveland, the Lakers. Think about it. LeBron wanted Anthony Davis, and it's like a match made in heaven. And the Lakers won a championship. Steph, Clay, when Katie arrived, it was like a match made in heaven, and Golden State was unbelievable. Kyrie is nothing but a 2, but he can't be willing to accept that. Wasn't willing to accept it in Cleveland. And by the way, Boston gave the indication they didn't need Kyrie. They didn't need him because Jason Tatum, a young 21-year-old, managed to get Boston into the Eastern Conference Final. And that's without Gordon Hayward. That's without Kyrie. So he didn't really need him. Now he comes to Brooklyn and he fantasized and he ranted and raved. Oh, we need to get Katie in here. We need to get... Now Katie's there and you bail on him for 7 days. You bail on him and you bail on James Harden. So I don't know about this. I don't really know about this whole situation. And to me, I get sick and tired of hearing it. I get sick and tired of talking about it. But all I can say is if you're Brooklyn right now, you might as well just trade away Kyrie. Because if you're not going to be a part of this process and you're not going to move with this team, then obviously you don't have a place for it. They don't need you. I've learned this growing up playing sports. Teams are not necessarily in a time of need. Now, there are some pieces that they need to fill in. That's different. But they want to have certain players who know that they gel well. They know that they're very coachable, and they actually work together with this team to win championships. That's why certain role players always work in this league. And when it comes to the NBA, I get sick and tired of all of these, disrespectful antics. I get sick and tired. But the NBA media always caters to it. And I don't understand that. I couldn't believe nobody told Katie, don't do it. Don't sign the contract. Don't go to Brooklyn. Think about it. Would Patrick Mahomes, of all people, would he have at least taken that contract with Jacksonville? Or would he have taken that contract with any other team that's been low? They would be like, no, Pat, don't do that. The NBA, they need to fix this. They need to fix this. Because honestly, when you get all of these young kids and they're not coachable, a lot of them, they're so overwhelmed. You get shoe deals, you get moneyed endorsements and all this other stuff. And these agents, some of them, they're just in to get paid. They don't really care too much about the developments of some of these young kids. And you can clearly see that. There are more players than Kyrie that do this. But Kyrie, either get your head out of your you-know-what, or just stop playing. We're tired of this. Tired of going through this. All right, coming up next, there are a few things that I definitely wanted to end up talking about in the league. The NHL, it's back up and running. I'm loving it. I think it's very interesting about how short the season is, but there is a lot of urgency. And I'm going to explain more about that as well. And I'm also going to explain about a couple of teams that I think are going to be very impactful throughout this whole season. And plus, too, at the bottom of the hour in the second hour, I'm definitely going to have my top 3 winners and losers in the NFL week from that weekend in the divisional. You guys, you're going to love this one because I think this is very, very interesting. But I'm going to have a lot more coming up next. All right, guys. So if you haven't done so already, we have a lot of gear. And I'm talking shirts, hats, hoodies, so much more on the Spotlight Sports gear. There's so much that you guys can end up shopping from keeping yourselves warm and cozy in this cold season. So when you also go online, you go online to spotlightsportsgear.com. When you shop today, you'll get 15% off everything of your purchases all throughout this month of January. And who doesn't want that? You save up a little bit in your pocket, and you're also repping for the network and your favorite shows like this one on the network as well. So definitely check it out here on the SpotlightSportsGear.com. 15% off on all of your purchases. Well, guys, if you guys are diehard New York Jet fans and you guys love sports content from news, highlights, and play-by-plays, definitely check out Gangrene David on the Spotlight Sports Network. So, this was an interesting weekend in the NFL. There was a lot of big-time takeaways, and, I just think that this weekend, what I've been noticing about from a lot of these teams, and Kansas City, without Patrick Mahomes, who was on concussion protocol after he just, the neck injury. Yeah, it was tough. It was absolutely tough, and I can't say it enough. But Kansas City, how they just ended up coming back, and they did not have their star quarterback. They had Chad Henne, who came in, and how Andy Reid, for as close as that game was, they still managed to win the game. And I truly think we sometimes doubt a lot of these other coaches. And I know a lot of people say a lot about Bill Belichick and his mind and so much more. But Andy Reid, how he was able to put this thing together, even when times got tough, they lose Mahomes. In comes Henny. And they still managed to be efficient. The defense made some much needed stops. And by the way, I'm not taking anything away from Cleveland. But Cleveland, to me, after I've watched that entire game, they were slow to start with. They were slow to start in that whole entire game, and I couldn't even believe it. And then eventually things started to kick back up. And Baker, again, a lot of people, including myself, including myself, was very much concerned about how Cleveland was going to play. I mean, it's no question. But at the same time, Cleveland's got a bright future. Their offense is stellar. It's stacked. The offensive line is really good. The only thing that they need to do is they need to clean up the secondaries. But what Kansas City showed you is that with Andy Reid, how deep his playbook goes, whether he does or he doesn't have Patrick Mahomes, he still managed to end up getting through every game. And I was not high on Chad Henne. I think he's a nice guy, been in the league for a long time. He's a Michigan Wolverine product. But all of this was just all of the works of Andy Reid. Now, they got Buffalo this next weekend. And the only question is Mahomes going to be healthy enough to be playing in the game? Because if not, Buffalo's still going to put up a fight. But Buffalo in the last couple of games, they scored 27 but gave up 24 to Indianapolis. They scored 17 and they beat Baltimore by 3. And of course, Baltimore loses Lamar Jackson. But Buffalo's got a tough task ahead of them. I think this is going to be fun. I think this is going to be probably one of the most entertaining games this weekend because not only am I getting Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes, but I'm also getting Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers with the Bucs and Packers. The Packers, to me, really made huge adjustments to coming into the postseason. They are a team not to mess with. Aaron Rodgers has been throwing efficient. The defense, including the linebackers, has surprised me. I didn't think this linebacking core, since they gave up some key pieces, was going to play this well. This is one thing that for Green Bay, they are proving every single doubter wrong. And the offense has been very efficient. Devontae Adams, Marquez Valdes-Scantling, even the run game with Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. They've been running the football efficiently. The offensive line, by the way, is one of the tops in the league. They've been very protective of Aaron Rodgers. And what I'm seeing with Matt LaFleur and how innovative this league has been getting. These young coaches like LaFleur and Shanahan and McVay, they all are moving in positive directions. And Green Bay is just telling you, McCarthy was so outdated, they needed to move off of him. And Matt LaFleur, I think, once he came in with his innovative playbook, that was a match made in heaven. But this weekend, Bills, Chiefs, Bucs, and Packers, you can't ask for more than that. And I truly think that at the end of the day, you're going to have a lot of different, you're going to have a lot of different looks. You're going to have a lot of different takes from here. But man, I think this next weekend, it's tough for me to pick because everybody is hoping that Patrick Mahomes is going to be healthy. If he's not healthy, that's going to be some serious problems for Kansas City. And Buffalo, I think they're going to put up a fight. But this is going to be one of those interesting weekends. You got old quarterbacks all right below, but these new quarterbacks, younger, faster, stronger, mobile, you can't ask for a better weekend than that. All right, time for the hot press. All right, so the New York Mets, they had a serious situation earlier, and Sandy Alderson ended up talking about Jared Porter, and the hiring was a quote-unquote wake-up call to the New York Mets organization and vows to do better in the vetting processes. So he announced just Tuesday earlier of the firing of general manager Jared Porter for explicit and unsolicited texts and images that he sent to a reporter in 2016. So, and listen, the Mets are very interesting. The Mets, I think, are going to be really, really good. But this is going to be interesting how things are going to end up shaping for them. I mean, this is a team that is fresh off of trading for Francisco Lindor. And they got Carlos Carrasco. They're trying to get more and more players. And now having this happen, that's kind of a big hit. And I talked about this with Jeff Hammond, a.k.a. Hammer, in the last episode of the Snake Sports Talk Show. That was tough. This is tough. But the Mets, I think, are still going to be competitive. But whoever they bring in as a new general manager and how Sandy Alderson is really going to work this thing, I mean, the Mets right now got their heartbeat. But the last thing they needed was disappointment like this. So as far as what we're hearing with Kansas City, so the word is with quarterback Patrick Mahomes, he's cleared the steps, but is still right now in protocol for safety reasons. Now, of course, the concussion protocols, they say it's too early right now to say that he's definitely going to play in the AFC Championship game. But of course, they've noticed some big steps in Mahomes, as from what we've heard from Adam Schefter. He's made some big steps already into his walk back out of protocol. But there are still some things that need to happen. Now, of course, it's not easy to get through concussion protocols because it's the nerves, it's the reaction times, it's a lot. So it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see how Mahomes really works it all throughout this week. Now, again, a lot of these players, they get big time hits. It's tough to come back from certain situations like this. Also, too, sad news in the baseball world as Hall of Fame pitcher Don Sutton ended up passing away at 75. Don Sutton was a longtime Los Angeles Dodgers right-handed pitcher who won over 300 games in his career. That earned him the ballot of being in the Hall of Fame. News reports had said that Don Sutton had died of cancer in his home in Rancho Mirage, California at 75. Darren Sutton said, saddened to share that my dad passed away in his sleep last night. He worked as hard as anyone I've ever known. And he treated those he encountered with great respect. And he took me to work a lot. For all these things, I'm very grateful. Rest in peace. And Darren Sutton's son, the son of the late Don Sutton. I mean, Don Sutton was incredible. Don Sutton was such an incredible pitcher. He spent 16 of the 23 seasons with the Dodgers, spanning from 66 to 1980, including his final tour in 88, where he was a four-time All-Star with a career 324 wins and 256 losses with an ERA of 3.26. And his 324 rank is at 14th in Major League history. So a lot of these big-time pitchers, it's not easy to get to 300 wins. It's not. You can ask a lot of these big-time pitchers. It's a large milestone, but it's a sad day. Another long-time Dodger great. After we've heard with Tommy Lasorda, this was sad. This was sad. But again, he lived a long life. He was a big-time Hall of Famer. And again, his son could not have said it any better in his final words. And so thoughts and prayers go to the Sutton family, and lost a great one. Lost an absolute great one. And finally, Karis LeVert, who was just fresh off of the trade from Brooklyn to Indiana, says it could have possibly saved his life after he found out about the mass in his kidney. So, of course, he had that recent MRI where there was a small mass on his left kidney recently. He did go on to say, I didn't have any symptoms. I was playing in games. I hadn't missed any games this season yet. I was feeling 100% healthy. So in a way, this trade definitely showed and revealed what was going on in my body. So I'm definitely looking at it from that side, and definitely humbled to know that this trade could have possibly saved my life in the long run. Now, Karis LeVert, this is kind of a crushing blow to the Brooklyn Nets off their bench, as he comes into an Indiana system where they got rid of Victor Oladipo, and they still have, they still got Domantas Sabonis, and they do have at least a couple of impactful players, and even Malcolm Brogdon. But I think Karis LeVert is going to fit very nicely in the future to come for the Indiana Pacers. But unfortunately, with the mass found in his kidney, out indefinitely for the season, it was a crushing blow indeed. But thoughts and prayers for the recovery for Karis LeVert. But again, I think that this is why you go and get checked up. Listen, I've had a couple of tweaks and injuries, and the last thing I want is a potential tear that might screw something up in my body, and so on and so forth. And again, these athletes are not superhuman, so it's tough. It's very, very tough for a lot of these athletes and what they go through on a daily basis. But at least for Karis LeVert, this is an eye opener. So very happy that, he was able to find this out sooner than later. Otherwise, it could have done a lot more damage in his career. So good things from him moving forward. So, folks, that is going to be your hot press. Coming up next, I'm going to be talking a little bit more on the NHL, as, of course, as promised, I will definitely talk a lot about just this shortened season and how impactful that it's going to be all throughout it. I think this is going to be one of the toughest seasons. But real quick, before we ended up going, we wanted to check at least a couple of these chats from here, from our good friends. What's going on, Ty Walker? What's going on, BL? And shout out to Jay in the Bay, one of our really good colleagues here on the Spotlight Sports Network, who covers everything on San Francisco 49ers content. Also Golden State Warriors. So definitely check him out at Jay in the Bay. What's going on, Skyler? My good friend there. Key in the building, guys. If you haven't checked out already, if you are diehard Philadelphia sports, as far as the Sixers, Flyers, Phillies, and of course the Philadelphia Eagles, definitely check out Key in the building. She's got a lot to say about everything Philadelphia. Like, subscribe, hit the bell button, and keep yourselves notified. Come on down here. What's going on, Malguli? If you guys are diehard wrestling fans as well, definitely check out Malguli in the Ghoulie Zone. For everything AEW, Raw, SmackDown, and of course NXT, and so much more. For diehard wrestling fans like yourselves, definitely check out Malguli in the Ghoulie Zone. Like, subscribe. What's going on, Mac Dre? So there's a question here. Do you think OG Anunoby stays with the Raptors or gets traded because of them losing? Now, I think that's going to be a tough scenario. I do like OG Anunoby. I think he's a good player. I think he's one that's a really impressive role player. But it's really going to depend. It's really going to depend on the situation that Toronto is in. But I'm not saying they're a big, there'll be a big time impactful team, but especially with the direction that they are going, they still do have some young kids that they're trying to evolve. They're trying to build up. But I think honestly, I think that the Raptors should keep Anunoby. If something else kind of comes up into the woodworks where you're getting some big time draft picks, or you're getting at least, players swap, then that I think will be very interesting. So What's going on, Spotlight Raiders Talk? What's going on? If you guys haven't checked out already, if you guys are diehard Raiders fans and you guys love Raiders content, definitely check out the Spotlight Raiders Talk as well for everything live play-by-plays, highlights, news talks, and so much more on everything Raiders. Definitely go subscribe, hit the bell button, and keep yourselves notified. What's going on, Josh Soto? What's happening? All righty, guys. So we're going to be taking at least a slight break from here. When I come back, we'll talk a lot more about NHL. And of course, as the next hour comes along, we'll be talking a lot more about the NFL and what to expect. And not to mention my favorite segment at the bottom of the hour is my top 3 winners and losers of the divisional round. So stay tuned, guys. Don't go anywhere. Snake Sports Talk Show on the Spotlight Sports Network.
Welcome to the My City, My Game pod show featuring Raider J77, your place for all things Raiders and all things Trailblazers. Brought to you by the Spotlight Sports Network. Make sure you like, subscribe, and hit the bell for notifications. Now let's go.
If you guys are diehard Raider fans and you guys are also diehard Trailblazers fans, definitely go and check out my good friend John Francis, a.k.a. Raider J77, on the Spotlight Sports Network with his show where he's got his reaction Mondays and Tuesdays at My City, My Game. So, I just ended up getting this news report, but apparently there has been some news talks about, speaking of which, because we had it here in the comments, about George Springer. And from what I'm being told from sources, that George Springer might be close to signing a deal with the Toronto Blue Jays. That is going to be very interesting. And the Blue Jays did, in fact, sign reliever Kirby Yates to a contract. And listen, I think Houston is still going to be fine. I still do think they're going to be competitive, but it's not going to be as competitive as people think. But I think this addition with George Springer to the Toronto Blue Jays really helps their offense. And think about it. You got Kevin Biggio, you got Vladimir Guerrero Jr., you have Bo Bichette. This team's getting younger and better. And the only thing that's always concerned me about Toronto was who their frontline starters are going to be and how their bullpen is going to match up. But not have to worry now about Kirby Yates being in there, because I think with his bullpen presence, he's been really, really impressive with San Diego this past year. So I really do think he's going to be very interesting to watch. But when we have more and more news updates, we will very much gladly keep you up to date here on the Spotlight Sports Network. So this NHL season has been very interesting, and I think one for the ages and one for the books, because what has changed about hockey? Well, we're shortened up with the season. We now have sponsorships everywhere, and they're all over the players' helmets and so much more. Because apparently, once the pandemic shutdown hit, they lost a big amount of revenue. And that's one that they're trying to get back with all these sponsorships. And it's difficult because now that there's no fans in the stands. Now, every single one of the teams in the league, they're all in their respective clubs. They're all in their respective arenas, in their homes. But without their fans, I mean, this is interesting. I'm happy and I'm excited that the Vegas Golden Knights are back in T-Mobile Arena. But I've watched these 3 games already. And if you watch me doing live play-by-play commentaries, definitely check it out. But this is an interesting season. This is an interesting season that none of us can wrap in our heads. And hockey is always physical. Hockey's always hyped up. And it really kind of brings out the crowd. It brings out the vibe, brings out the energy. But every single one of these players are feeling it very hard. And it's unfortunate. But this season feels like baseball. Because baseball, it's 162 games a year. You have spring training. You have postseason afterward. It's a very, very long season. Now, these guys have had shortened camps. They have shortened training camps. So not a lot of them, even for some that were either signing big-time contracts elsewhere or were traded, they're all trying to get used to their new clubs. And it's tough because a lot of these players haven't really connected as much as we usually see them before the season starts. And it's difficult. But a lot of teams have been very competitive. I was just on last night on Drop Your Gloves podcast with my good friend Bobby of Butcher's Block and Patriots Talk. And I think this is, I just truly think that this is one for the ages, that all of us as hockey fans are going to end up remembering that this was a shortened season, no fans. I mean, this is tough. This is absolutely tough. And not to mention, all of these divisions broken up, the Honda West, the Mass Mutual East, Scotia North, and the Discover Central. So they moved a lot of these teams that were in different divisions from Metropolitan, the Atlantic, Pacific, and of course the Central Division. So I can tell you this. I'm glad hockey is back. I haven't yet really figured out how this season's really going to pan out. But if I had to look at competitive teams, Vegas, St. Louis, Colorado in the West are going to be competitive. In the East, I look at Philadelphia, New Jersey, and I do believe the Islanders are going to be very competitive. A couple of sleepers that I mean, listen, with as short that this season is, every win and every loss counts. So time can be running out for some teams. I mean, think about it. You got Buffalo and you got the Rangers, and then you got Boston, who Boston just let go of Big Z and let go of Torrey Krug. I'm not sure what Boston's scenario is going to be, but it seems like this table's just, the timetable's moving. It's moving very fast. There's a lot of urgency. The Scotia North, I think Toronto will be competitive. Bits and pieces of me says Montreal, Calgary shaped up very differently, but I think they did point out a lot of their needs. But I'd watch out for Ottawa. I'd watch out for Ottawa this year. They picked up a lot of big-time players. They got a lot of them from their draft picks. They got a lot of them from trades and from free agent signings. They got cap. But as far as some of these teams below, I mean, Vancouver, I don't know when their offense is going to click, but they lost Tyler Toffoli, signing with Montreal. And their defense, I think, still needs to reshape up. But it is in a positive way. Quinn Hughes, I think, is very competitive. But Edmonton, I already know this story. They lost a bunch of their players. They lost Andreas Athanasiou. They lost a couple of players. Edmonton just does not look the same. And again, time's running out for them when it comes to Connor McDavid. Because if they managed to make it into the Stanley Cup playoffs, but then got upset, I mean, that's a bad rap for the Oilers. And time is ticking with them with Connor McDavid. And then finally, to Discover Central. I think Tampa will still continue to be competitive because, listen, Tampa's fast. Tampa's very defensive. And they still got a lot of depth. And Andrei Vasilevsky, very, very talented goaltender. Florida, I thought, made some interesting moves themselves, but I'm not sure how long that it's going to be. Carolina will still be competitive. They had to make a bunch of shifts, but they're still in that competitive state. But the one that I'm curious to see is Dallas, because they haven't played their games yet. They had 6 of their players that got hit with COVID. And I think they're a very competitive team. They got tough goaltending. They've got tough offensive players. So however this thing shapes up for Dallas, again, there are competitive teams across the board. But if you had to ask me which ones were big-time competitive, I think Colorado, St. Louis, and Vegas. They're big-time teams in the West. In the East, Tampa's still going to be competitive. You might think the Islanders might be competitive as well because they stay very balanced. But this is an interesting season. It's a very interesting season. It's a lot of fun, a lot of excitement, and I can't wait for it. Hour 2 coming up next here on the Snake Sports Talk Show. We're live on the Spotlight Sports Network.
like the Oakland A's? Are you a fan of the Golden Knights? Do you love the Los Angeles Chargers? Well then, my friend, you're in the right place. This is the Snake Sports Talk Show with your host, Jake the Snake SIlva, brought to you by the Spotlight Sports Network.
All right, folks, hour 2 and the final hour of the one place that you guys love here on the Spotlight Sports Network. That is the Snake Sports Talk Show, wherever and however you may be watching and listening. We are live in the 702 in Vegas on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and, of course, Twitch. Appreciate all of you guys being on here. And by the way, we finally got some official news, and thank goodness to all of our good fans here. Really do appreciate all of you guys. But 3-time All-Star George Springer ended up taking a 6-year, $150 million contract with the Toronto Blue Jays. It's a massive deal. And Toronto ended up paying a premium price for a premium player. So George Springer's headed up north, and it's going to be very interesting to see how the Toronto Blue Jays really do play. But from what I was told as well, because Toronto isn't really going to be back home anytime soon, they haven't made any kind of news or announcements because last year they were playing down in they were playing down back up in Florida in their AAA stadium, and it was unfortunate because a lot of fans up north, they love going and watching the Blue Jays game in Rogers Center. I think it's beautiful there. But eventually, when this whole global pandemic clears up and everything starts to return back to normal, I think we're very much going to see a lot of big time changes. But I mean, this is one that, if we don't get this thing cleared up, it's going to be crazy. But at the same time, they get a big-time player. Congratulations to the Toronto Blue Jays. This is going to be very interesting. I'd like to see how this outfield shapes up, but Toronto just got better. Toronto did just get a little bit better. I think if they go and get at least a couple of fresh arms, hopefully some really good rotation guys, Toronto is going to be right there in the driver's seat. All right. I wanted to talk at least a little bit about baseball, since we're kind of on this subject, and now we got Toronto that ended up getting George Springer. But last year, of course, what that gave us, shortened season, back and forth talks, couldn't really figure out whether or not the season was going to start or what. But in a shortened season that we ended up getting in baseball, if there's one thing baseball did do right, I mean, they played with no fans. When it came to the postseason, they initiated a bubble. Games were played in California, in San Diego, and in LA. And then, of course, the rest of them were played in Texas, in Houston, and Arlington. And the rest of the World Series was all there in Arlington. It's interesting how they kind of put this whole thing together. But we've got pitchers catchers report next month. And I can't wait for baseball season to start back up. I'm a big-time baseball fanatic. And like hockey, of course, the season just took way too long. But from what I was told, Rob Manfred, the commissioner, which all of you guys know and love, maybe selective, but has announced that all the teams in the league are going to end up they're going to get ready for a 162 game season. That's what's going to be the interesting deal. Now, it will be kind of tough because of the fact of, one, you don't have fans in the stands. So I don't know how this is going to pan out. But if you ask me, I mean, I really was, I was very intrigued how this season went with as far as without the fans, the shortened season, then they get to the postseason. And then of course, they started trading, they just started they just started kind of going back and forth with this. But again, I truly think this is going to be something special. I think this is going to be a very interesting year. Now they're bringing a full season together, but again, I thought we could have got at least 100 games in. If I'm baseball right now, we would have gotten 100 games into the season. Forget the rest of the 62 because those ones are pretty much meaningless games. I get it. There's sense of urgencies, and I get it. People are like, well, the season's too long. Nobody's going to pay attention. Is it? I get that. Nobody's really big time fans when it comes to the season in baseball. Okay, they're more interested when they turn on the television and it's postseason because it's nerve-wracking. But they could have got at least 100 or if not 90 games in that season. Let the kids play too. You got unis, you got gloves, you got cleats, you got all this stuff, and the kids are having fun. Let them bat flip. Let them trick it out. Let them, show off their stuff. Let the kids play, right? Isn't that the slogan? Why are we not doing that? I've been voicing that out for a while, and I was pissed at Major League Baseball because of it. But I'll tell you this, because there have been a bunch of teams that have been on the move. Toronto's been up on the move, and San Diego, okay, of all teams in the National League, I know why that San Diego is getting competitive. The Dodgers are fresh from a World Series, but San Diego has something else. They got a big-time potential player, Fernando Tatis Jr. I love watching this kid. This kid is hyper athletic, very defensive, has a great stick, and I mean the kid is an all-around just hot, just a big-time potential player, and at a young age. In his early 20s. A lot of these moves that San Diego has been making with Blake Snell, Yu Darvish, Joe Musgrove, they've been stacking up because they're trying to acclimate and they're trying to get even more competitive because the Dodgers are fresh off a World Series. Atlanta, they have Ronald Acuna. They got Ozzie Albies, Freddie Freeman. They have a bunch of real good players. But sometimes their bullpen and their rotation at times could really fall apart. Now, I get it. They were without Mike Soroka for the rest of the year, but there are some potential arms. But now you got the Mets getting competitive after they get Francisco Lindor. I think if they get themselves a really good rotation guy, maybe they'll be right there up on the map where they'll win the NL East. But it's not going to come as easy because you got Atlanta, Philadelphia. Come on, can we just be honest? They don't have a strong rotation. They don't have a strong bullpen, and it's unfortunate. But all these teams getting competitive, a lot of them are moving up national. And by the way, the biggest difference, the universal DH. That is going to be huge. Now, if the universal DH is set in stone and it's put in play, I mean, think about it. The Nationals just got Kyle Schwarber from Chicago. That's a big-time upgrade if they get the universal DH to pass. And let's be honest. I know it's a competitive game in the National League because you're challenging these pitchers to hit. But some of these pitchers in the American League were not really taught to hit. They were just taught to just pitch location, get them through 7 quality innings, and that's it. I'm not saying these guys can't hit because I've watched Jacob deGrom. I've watched Madison Bumgarner. I've watched Noah Syndergaard, and I've watched a lot of these guys. Some of these pitchers can hit, and even Zach Greinke. But majority of the times, if you get an extra bat in the lineup, then that's what's really going to favor it well. And listen, I play in a sport where we have universal DHs, and sometimes we do have pitchers that hit. But ultimately, the DHs is a huge move for baseball because National League, they'll feel like they're so balanced with the American League. It's crazy. And, not to brag, but, some of these National League teams like the Cubs, the Dodgers, the Nationals, the Mets, the Padres, a lot of them are going to benefit well because of this universal DH. The Padres are just getting competitive with their pitching staff. And they've got a really good kid in Mike Paddock. But like I said, it's going to be a complete difference maker. Baseball is going to be very interesting. But my only hope is that they do this right. Because when they did the postseason, it was the right move to make a bubble out of it. Going to California and going to Texas. And California was very risky because of the high amounts of cases of COVID. That was tough, but they managed to get through it. And then they moved the World Series to Texas. In the brand new stadium for Arlington and for the Rangers, that's where they had the World Series. I thought it was really interesting that they flip-flopped teams, though. American would play National, National would play American ballparks. Why? Is it because of the home field advantages? I don't get it. How could that be if there's not a whole lot of fans in the stands? I don't get it. And fans really do make a huge difference in sports. You're seeing that in hockey. You're seeing that in the NFL. Now, the NFL has been allowing more fans in, and we'll see how that goes. But, hockey, basketball, and baseball have only been the ones that have less amount of the fans or no fans at all. And the NFL, in order to generate their revenue, they had to at least have some fans in the stands. But this will be interesting to see how this baseball season goes because there's a lot of big-time stories. A.J. Hinch, hoping he'll bounce back and he'll rebound for the Tigers. Toronto getting competitive. San Diego getting competitive. Nationals are trying to stay right in the middle of it. But I don't know. And from what I'm being told, real quick, now we've got more breaking news as left-handed pitcher Jose Quintana, who spent years with the Chicago Cubs, he's right now going to be up on the move as the LA Angels of Anaheim are working on a deal to send him there. We're not sure of it yet. We'll keep you up to date here on the Spotlight Sports Network, but this is what I love about off-season baseball, and as we're kind of getting close into the season. Now, it did take later than usual, but this is what I love about off-season baseball. Moves are happening at any time, and again, I think it's great. I think it's great. It's just hyping all of us baseball fans up. Coming up next, there are few teams in the NFL. Some I think are very much going to favor well. I've been speaking about this earlier. And some that I think they're just close but no cigar. I'm going to explain those teams. And I'm also going to end up breaking down what now needs to happen for next year and maybe for beyond. But I'll have all of that coming up next here on the Spotlight Sports Network. For all of you die-hard fantasy champions out there, far and wide, from coast to coast, wherever you may be, if you guys love fantasy play and you guys also love winning cold, hard cash in the middle of it, there's one website and an app that you can download on your phone from Apple and Google Play, and that's called thrivefantasy.com. And Thrive Fantasy has all of your fantasy needs. And you can vote on it based upon players' projections and their performances. And there was a bunch of pool plays. And by the way, best of all, you could be winning up to $15,000 in these pool plays when you enter in. Now, when you go online and you download the app and you sign up today, use promo code SS Network, short for Spotlight Sports Network. When you put in $20 or more in your first deposit, Thrive Fantasy always promises to match it up to $50 in your first play. So go online, download the app. It's called thrivefantasy.com. Use promo code SS Network. Thrivefantasy.com, promo code SS Network.
What's up, Fantasy Champions? Spotlight Sports Network is excited to tell you about an amazing deal from Thrive Fantasy, your place for daily fantasy sports and esports. Right now, with promo code SS Network, Thrive Fantasy will match up to $50 of your first deposit. So go to thrivefantasy.com and sign up now with promo code SS Network. That's thrivefantasy.com, promo code SS Network.
So if you guys haven't done so already and you guys are diehard fans of the Snake Sports Talk Show, well, I definitely got gear as well on the spotlightsportsgear.com. Definitely check it out. We got hoodies, t-shirts, hats, and so much more when you go online. And when you shop, you get 15% off of all purchases. So definitely go and check it out and get yourselves geared up for the Snake Sports Talk Show and, of course, the Spotlight Sports Network. So the reports now on Jose Quintana, he is leaving Chicago and he is headed to the Angels. He signed a 1-year, $8 million contract deal, so he is going to be part of the Angels rotation. A very interesting signing, and I also do think that this is now going to officially put, well, I don't know if it'll be officially, but the Angels are finally starting to listen to me. This is one thing I want to talk about just shortly before we get into the NFL, but you're finally listening to me. This whole thing, when Billy Epler was the general manager of the Angels, he was responsible for so many contracts. He was responsible for the Albert Pujols contract. He was responsible for the C.J. Wilson contract. Also was responsible for that massive deal to Mike Trout. And out of this whole thing, I mean, I don't know about you, but the Angels, every single year, it's much like some of these teams in the NFL. They get so overly hyped. They're like, oh yeah, we got Mike Trout. We got the greatest baseball player currently. And he's got bats. He's got defense. But my problem has always been about their rotation. And their bullpen is not as intimidating. I've spoken to so many people about the Angels, and finally now they're listening to me. They're listening to the problems. They brought in a new general manager, and since he came into the building, because listen, the owners of the Angels, okay, he's a very smart guy. But when they had this whole spiel with Billy Epler, I mean, this was almost literally running the Angels down to the ground. Even in a short season, folks, they couldn't get into the postseason. That should tell you a lot. And you're talking about the best baseball player currently in the league. That doesn't make any sense. But once Billy Epler left the building, they bring in a new GM, and I've really been liking his picks. I've really been liking his moves. I think the Angels are finally start to listen to the reasons in their heads. They are finally starting to listen to it because they ended up getting a bunch of pitchers. They ended up getting a bunch of really good role players. I don't know how Joe Adell is going to play, but of course you're dealing with that massive contract of Albert Pujols by the time he's old and has nothing left in the tank. I mean, this is good news. This is really good news getting Jose Quintana. Now, he's not a borderline big-time starter, but this is one that you can build your rotation around because they got a bunch of guys like Dylan Bundy and Julio Teheran. Those guys were so mediocre. And Teheran was not as consistent. I think was off on some of his pitches. And luckily for Atlanta, because there were a bunch of other pitchers in front or behind him that were able to give him 6 quality innings. But since then, he'd been mediocre. And same with Dylan Bundy. And you have to think about how many times we laugh at the Baltimore Orioles. But kudos. I think this new general manager for the Angels is going to work really, really well. Okay, so back to football, which we love talking about, right? So a lot of these teams, and again, this whole Deshaun Watson discussion, because right now Houston's in trouble. Houston is completely in trouble. But much like a lot of these teams in the NFL, even with Andrew Luck and the Colts finally addressed the problem a couple of years back. They managed to get a strong offensive line. And that was what was going to help Andrew Luck. Excuse me. But then Luck retires. Luck retires even after the amount of times that he had been banged up. He had been hurt. And he was still able to carry this team 11-5 in the last couple seasons, in the first couple seasons of his career, but was still suffering injury after injury, hit after hit. And it didn't seem like things were getting better. And what I made about Deshaun Watson, I think Deshaun is a great thrower of the football. I think he's very mobile and he's athletic. He's dynamic in certain plays in certain situations. There are a bunch of teams that were calling to him. I think the Jets are a beautiful fit because they don't know if Sam Darnold's really the guy. And having Robert Saleh there, and by the way, Deshaun Watson did note to Houston about their coaching move that he wanted Robert Saleh. So expect something. Expect something by the offseason. Because if the Jets do this right, they get their quarterback. If they trade that number 2 pick to Houston, that's going to save them a ton. And they're going to have to get serious because Houston had so many opportunities outside of Laramie Tunsil. They haven't been able to fix the offensive line for Deshaun at all. And Deshaun suffered an ACL tear, been hit 200 times. When was it going to get better? Nobody knows. And that was the hard part I had. But, you know, in this whole topic of conversation, I think if Deshaun Watson leaves, it's better for him. And that's just Houston's wake-up call. Think about it. The city of Houston, they just lost George Springer to Toronto. They'll still be competitive, but it won't be as impactful. Deshaun Watson, at some point, he's going to demand a trade. It hasn't been official, even though, you know, we watch social media all the time and we just see how Deshaun really is just looking. He's not happy there. And then you have the Houston Rockets where you had the James Harden situation, but then it was this back and forth thing. They go and trade for Russell Westbrook. You lose a lot of big-time players because of it, and you lost Daryl Morey. Now life is crash landing. That's what's happening at this point. So Houston, the city of Houston and the fans there, they're absolutely ticked. They're pissed off because now the Rockets are imploding. Deshaun Watson leaves out of Houston, the Texans organization. They're going to implode, but they need to shape it better. And if this is the wake-up call for some of these teams, then that's what you got to have. By the way, I mean the Detroit Lions. There's a really, really good Detroit Lion content creator, and he spoke about this. And it was kind of hard. I watched all through the video. And he announced his resignation as being a guy that was going to provide Detroit Lions content because he'd been sick of how Detroit always gives their hopes up and they never get competitive. Listen, Detroit has never been competitive in a long, long time. And by the way, this will shock you. Matt Stafford's 32. I don't think any of you guys realize that. Matthew Stafford is 32 years old. They haven't fixed the offensive line for him. I don't know if DeAndre Swift is the real deal, but Kenny Golladay now is going to be a free agent, and he needs weapons. The defense needs to be shut down. And moves that they have been making, even for their next head coach. They got their next head coach. This was a team that, you know, they just moved off of Matt Patricia, who was a defensive-minded coach. It didn't work. But I don't know how this whole scenario, again, if I spoke to a diehard Detroit Lions fan and try to get an answer out of this, then maybe things will come out a little clearer and a little better. But I don't know, folks. I mean, Detroit has had nice pieces for a while. They've had it for at least a long time. But at this point, you know, Detroit, they're laughing stocks of the NFL. You know, and there are a bunch of teams that are like that. But right now, as I'm seeing it, I mean, Detroit, they make all these media. Something's just not right with this, with the ownership, because they make all of these mediocre moves. I don't understand. And it's like, are you trying to be competitive or what is the deal? Because I can't seem to figure it out. But Detroit really needs to, get a serious reality check and try to get this team to be competitive. I know it's Detroit. I understand their market and all this other stuff. But still, man, like, when was the last time we ever saw Detroit get competitive? Cleveland just got competitive this year, and they've got a bright future, by the way. So I'm not underestimating Cleveland at this point. I've been speaking a lot about Baker Mayfield. I've been speaking about this and that. But again, These are just some of these situations. And again, last year was an absolute wake-up call to every single one of us in our lives. Every single one of us all had these wake-up calls. We all had these reality checks. And a lot of us, we either benefited or we struggled behind it. However it went about. But when I look at it, this is going to be something that I think is going to be very, very interesting to watch for next season. But I think if you ask me the bounce back teams, I think the Jets are going to be a little bit more competitive. If they get Deshaun Watson, then they are very much going to have a better impact. Then you got the Chargers. The Chargers have enough talent where they can be competitive. And now having Brandon Staley, that's going to help their defense. That's going to make them even more than what they are. And the Rams, I think they're going to be just fine. But the concern about Jared Goff, the concern about him is just like, what are they going to do? Are they going to move off or what's the deal? But they got Raheem Morris as a defensive coordinator. I thought he would be a very good choice for the Chargers, but kudos to him. I think it's unfortunate, though, that Atlanta never really gave him that sure sign shot at being a head coach. But I think Arthur Smith is going to be very interesting, and the run game is going to be even better. Not to mention, Matt Ryan never really had an offensive coach in the last couple of years. They had a defensive-minded coach, but that was about it. And for a bunch of these other teams as well, Eric Bieniemy is still there. Now, I felt like Bieniemy would have been a perfect fit for Philadelphia because it's going to bring out the best in Miles Sanders. But at the same time, Philadelphia was just an absolute mess with Doug Peterson. And not to mention breaking the relationship with Carson Wentz, shaking things up with Jalen Hurts. I mean, Philadelphia could not afford that. That was why they had to make the move. They had to pull the strings. Bieniemy's still out there. There are a couple of other teams as well. And from what I'm being told, Philadelphia might be leaning towards Josh McDaniels, the offensive coordinator for New England. If that's the case, that's going to be very interesting to watch. I don't know how that's going to shake up, but you know what? He's been through a lot of toughness with New England. If he can handle that kind of toughness in Philadelphia, then good luck. Because apparently it doesn't seem to be a very attractive job from what I'm being told. All right, time now again for the hot press. All right, so of course the big time breaking news that we ended up hearing earlier as the Toronto Blue Jays ended up signing three-time All-Star outfielder George Springer to a 6-year, $150 million contract. Now, this is big-time news. I really do like this move. I think Toronto's is going to be very, very competitive. But George Springer, he's been their offensive leader for Houston in the leadoff spot for the past 4 seasons. And he hit a team-high 14 home runs this past season and added another 4 in the postseason before losing to the Tampa Bay Rays. Now, George Springer, his career number since then, after he signed that 1-year contract that avoided arbitration with Houston, he was able to hit .265, 32 home runs in 51 games in 2020, and while lowering his strikeout rate at 17%. So Toronto's getting a big-time player that if you put him there in the leadoff or if you put him somewhere in the middle of this lineup, imagine that. Springer, Bichette, Guerrero, Biggio. There is a bunch of big-time names, and I'm very excited to see how Toronto's going to shape up with their lineup. But, again, I think that if they get big-time starters, those are going to be complete game changers. So, however they move this thing, it's going to be very, very interesting to watch for the next couple of years. But Springer's moving up north. headed up north of the border. It's going to be exciting stuff. Love to see it. Also, the LA Angels of Anaheim ended up signing left-handed pitcher Jose Quintana to a 1-year, $8 million contract. 31-year-old was sent from the White Sox to the Cubs in 2017 in that trade deadline, but hasn't found the same success. He started in at least 4 games in 2020 due to injuries, and then not to mention the cut on his hand. He posted a 4.50 ERA while striking out 12 and walking 3. So coming into this Angels organization, where, as I said, they fired Billy Epler earlier, they got a new general manager in office. There is going to be some serious shakeups. Now, Quintana, I think, is a very interesting move, but I think it's one that's really going to stabilize the Angels because they need to make the serious moves to get them into the postseason, get Mike Trout more opportunities to be an impactful player in the postseason. That's the whole that's this conversation. That's the conversation that work. If they don't make this work, it's now just money, money thrown into the fire. And who knows if they're even going to be competitive. Now, they did sign Anthony Rendon last season, and they did get at least a bunch of good players. The offense I'm not worried about, but it's the rotation and the bullpen that has been the main problem to the Angels in the last couple of years. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how Quintana really comes in. But again, wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised, but we'll see. So, breaking news as the Jacksonville Jaguars, they ended up getting their new general manager as Trent Baalke is going to end up being their next general manager of this organization. And of course, the owner, Shaq Khan, he said he's going to be making a lot of moves, and he's made another big one after the Urban Meyer hiring. Now, Baalke, he has been in Jacksonville for nearly a year, joining the team as the front office as director of pro personnel in February, working under Dave Caldwell. Now, Caldwell was out the door by the end of November, and that was Jacksonville's 10th loss. So with him being in, he has a familiarization with this front office, and not to mention too, having Urban Meyer now as the next head coach for the Jacksonville Jaguars, they are going to be competitive for the next couple of years. I don't know how this is really going to work out, but Jacksonville, they're set to get Trevor Lawrence at number 1 overall pick. A transformative talent like that, you really could not go wrong. And it's no secret to anybody. But Urban Meyer is a guy that recruits. He's a guy that builds. And I think having this new general manager in Baalke, I think he's going to really utilize a lot of what Urban Meyer's mindset is to building this team. But Jacksonville is definitely set on it. And finally, the Detroit Lions, after they got their head coach, now they are set to picking up Aaron Glenn as their defensive coordinator out of New Orleans. So Dan Campbell was the big-time choice for the Detroit Lions, and they are still sticking to a defensive mind. Now, of course, Aaron Glenn, who had just recently was in the playoffs with the New Orleans Saints, had a really good relationship with Sean Payton. And Glenn worked under the same staff as Campbell under Sean Payton from 16 through 2020. A former defensive back who was also a head coaching candidate in New York as well. He ended up interviewing with the Jets before the Jets made the move with Robert Saleh. Now, again, that was a smart hire, but Aaron Glenn, he's got some experience. I think he's really going to help to shape this defensive back set for Detroit. But this is a team that, again, they're going defensive again. And I don't know how this is really going to shape up for this organization. But if you ask me, I mean, these are going to be interesting moves for sure. But I think Detroit, the city of Detroit, the fans of Detroit, they are hoping this team will get competitive again. But only time will tell. Man, I love it with some of these moves. Again, I'm super excited for the new season. But, guys, that's going to be your hot press. Coming up next, it's always my best for last here on this show as we have the top 3 winners and losers in the NFL divisional round. It's going to be very interesting because I do believe these are going to be big-time competitive teams. And I think they favored well in this divisional round. Now, I might, again, because it's tough to say with Kansas City, they escaped out of a huge jam. But man, was that competitive. But I'm going to have a lot of stuff to really talk about here with all of these teams coming up next here on the Snake Sports Talk Show. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Alrighty, folks. Well, first and foremost, I do want to thank every single one of you guys that have jumped on here and have hung out with me all throughout this Tuesday night. Man, we got a lot done. We got at least a lot done. That was so much that I ended up talking about here, but I need to get that out. This whole Kyrie Irving thing was ridiculous. And again, you either are with the program or you're not, you know, plain and simple. I don't get it, but I just truly think that what Kyrie Irving really just needs to do is I just think, listen, if you don't get any of this figured out, I understand that you got some issues, but at the same time, notify somebody about it because listen, I'm guaranteeing you this right now, that if I seriously made a move like in business or anywhere else where I'm just like, I just disappear. Sometimes I just tell people, I'm like, look, I need it. I'm going to be out for a while and I just need time off. You know, that's just that's the one thing people ask is if you notify and you let people know, then you're taken seriously. Kyrie, I just don't think is taken seriously, but like I said, it's kind of crazy to see something like that just happen. So, All right, guys. Well, my favorite segment of all, my best for last, as I got the top 3 teams from this NFL divisional weekend. Now, I thought this was very competitive, and one of them just escaped a jam. Others, I think, have done very, very well. But I think this is going to be so much fun. I think that how I broke this down, I think is very reasonable. So without further ado, let's go ahead and take a look at the top 3 this time. Top 3 winners and losers from the divisional round. And here we go.
Rank them up. It's the top 5 winners and losers of the NFL
All right, so the number 3 team for me that I thought was very interesting was the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I thought they did a very, very good job. And by the way, Tom Brady's playing like he hasn't aged one single bit. And fans in New England are pretty pissed right now. They're pissed not because Tom is succeeding, but because the Patriots made a massive mistake. They made a massive mistake throughout this whole thing. And it's unfortunate. And I just truly think that the Buccaneers, with their offense clicking right now, the defense, I think, does need I think the defense really needs to step it up a little bit more. I thought it was a great game. By the way, kudos to Drew Brees and a long career. But you're looking at all these older quarterbacks. You look at Big Ben. You look at Drew Brees. You look at Phillip Rivers. Tom's the only one that's really aged well at 43. And it's kind of crazy. But the Buccaneers right now, I thought they looked very competitive. They looked very strong. So I think Tampa is going to be a very interesting team to watch in the championship. All right, the number 2 team that I have is the Green Bay Packers. I mean, Aaron Rodgers, the clinic he put against the Rams and Sean McVay. Now, again, people can say what they want to, but Green Bay right now is just the red-hot team in the NFC. They figured out their situation. Aaron Rodgers was pushed this year after they moved up to get a quarterback to save their future. But I'm liking what I'm seeing out of the run game with Aaron Jones and with A.J. Dillon. I mean, these guys are packing punches. But what I've really enjoyed personally is how their defense has stepped up. Christian Kirksey, Rashawn Gary, these linebackers, listen, I take it back. These guys have really stepped up. And I'm loving what I'm seeing out of their defense. The front is making everything uncomfortable. By the way, they sacked Jared Goff at least 4 times in the game. And remember, Goff, when he sacked more than once, he's not the same quarterback. And by the way, I don't know what the deal is in LA, but I don't even know if they're sold on Jared Goff. So be aware of that. But the Packers and Aaron Rodgers, I know what I'm getting out of it. Aaron Rodgers has been playing out of his mind as an MVP, but I really have been liking what I'm seeing out of Green Bay so far. But here's the number 1 team that I thought was very interesting, but now finally deserves to be number 1. All right, the number 1 team is the Kansas City Chiefs. It's no question. What I saw out of them this past week, Patrick Mahomes, in his first couple of possessions against Cleveland, managed to put up points and he managed to put up yards. And Travis Kelce was a big-time helper in the middle of that mix. The run is going to be very interesting to see with Kansas City. I don't know how that's going to shape. But if you ask me right now, because Kansas City, all of this is all Andy Reid's doing. This is a method of his madness. When Patrick Mahomes went out with that concussion protocol and that neck injury, Chad Henne comes in. A guy who is a longtime veteran, got the job done, very competitive, still managed to keep Kansas City in the game. Now, Cleveland was still managing to be competitive on their own to try to tie this game up. But I don't know about you guys, but that whiff call, that was crazy. I could not believe they stole that away from Cleveland. And it's unfortunate, but stuff like this does happen. It's postseason football. That's what goes on. Refs are going to control the game. That's usually how it is in basketball. That's how it is in football also. So the top three, Buccaneers, Packers, and Chiefs are my winners. Now I'm talking about the losers here in this weekend. All right, the number 3 team, and listen, they're not completely losers. It's the New Orleans Saints. But here's what was hard. New Orleans was having troubles with some of their possessions. And Drew Brees, unlike Tom Brady in that game, Brees is getting old. And Brees, as I've said before, the ribs, I don't know anybody that can come back from broken ribs like that. It's unfortunate for Drew Brees, but listen, he's done so much for the city of New Orleans, for the Saints organization, provided a Super Bowl, and he's broken so many records. I mean, listen, after Peyton Manning retired, like Drew Brees was a guy that was setting records left and right. It was ridiculous. But unfortunately for New Orleans, of course, this was a move that needed to happen. And congratulations to Drew Brees on his retirement. I think he's going to favor very, very well. But New Orleans is going to be interesting to see in their quarterback situation because they still do have Jameis Winston and they do have Taysom Hill. I don't know how Sean Payton's going to deal with all this, but I'd be very interested to see if this is going to be a big-time change for New Orleans at quarterback. All right, the number 2 losers here was the Baltimore Ravens. It's unfortunate because, listen, Buffalo, I should say, was manhandling them left and right. And it was to the point that in the end, Lamar Jackson got hurt at the worst time of the game, and that was it. That was the final straw for Baltimore. But the positive that I can say for the Baltimore Ravens is at least that Lamar Jackson got his first playoff win. That shut the crowd up. He can win a playoff game. It's going to be interesting to see how Baltimore favors for this offseason. But in the end, they managed to make it through, and they managed to end up, making this work. And Baltimore finally got their playoff win against Tennessee. But after what I watched from Buffalo, I mean, Josh Allen, still accurate, but it's not going to be an easy task against Kansas City. If Mahomes is not there, I think Buffalo is set to get back into the Super Bowl again. But what I saw from Baltimore and from their defense is promising. That's not the issue. The issue is they don't have an over-the-top receiver and so much more. But I think they're going to work through that. Now here's the number 1 team. All right, the number 1 team is the LA Rams. I mean, after the performance they put on against Green Bay, it was tough. I mean, Jared Goff was sacked 4 times. He looked inconsistent. The run game was kind of iffy here and there, but the defense could not touch Aaron Rodgers. I mean, they limited Aaron Donald. They limited Michael Brockers. But if you were watching closely at these secondaries, Jalen Ramsey was getting burnt left and right from Devontae Adams. A lot of these guys, it was unfortunate because in the end, this was just no good. This was no good for the Rams. Now the Rams lose their defensive coordinator, but they did upgrade in getting Raheem Morris. They're still going to be a competitive team. But the real question is do you trust your faith in Jared Goff? Because listen, Goff hasn't looked the same. And these inconsistencies and so much more is what's the problem. And Rams fans want an answer. If they're going to end up getting a quarterback, listen, I like Jared Goff. I think he's a good kid. But the Rams are too competitive enough to not make noise in the NFC, even in the NFC West, and make their mark. But this is where they're going to have some serious talks with the front office. They're going to have serious talks with the head coach. And the Rams, I mean, like I said, it was unfortunate. They played their hearts out. They managed to beat Seattle. But in the end, that was just how they got cut off. So, well, there you have it, guys. Those are my top 3 winners and losers of the divisional round. So I had the Buccaneers at number 3, the Packers at number 2, and the Chiefs at number 1 is my winners. And then my losers was the Saints at 3, Ravens at 2, Rams at 1. I just think that in Kansas City being ranked number 1, and listen, this is always a method to Andy Reid's madness and how he works this because he's so offensive minded. And he's the kind of guy that he'll make anything work. He'll literally make anything work. And Kansas City this weekend is going to have a tough task because Sean McDermott is a very, very good defensive-minded coach. The defense with Tre'Davious White and Tremaine Edmonds, a lot of these guys, it's not going to be easy. And if you don't have Mahomes there, listen, I like Henny. I think he's a good story. I think it's a really good nod for him, but he's just not as dynamic. Now, I would be in awe that if Mahomes doesn't start and Henny pulls off something off of his sleeve with Andy Reid, I'd be in complete awe, like right off of it. I just like any of the possibilities can happen. And we didn't expect this out of Kansas City. We really did not expect this out of Kansas City. With Mahomes being hurt and so much more, and Buffalo still with Josh Allen, this is going to be interesting. This is going to be very interesting all throughout this weekend. Well, that's going to do it for me here tonight, guys. Thank you so much for being here, and tune in to me tomorrow night. I may possibly have the show. I will keep everybody up to date. But I was glad you guys could be here tonight. See you guys all on the next episode. Take care. Have a great Tuesday night, and we will see you guys later.